Hi there and welcome to this video. In this video, let's do Hetzner Debian 12 setup. So you're going to see an initial server setup for Debian 12 on Hetzner Cloud. If you want to use Debian for anything in a production environment, make sure you follow the steps to improve some aspects of security for your Debian server. First things first, I will use this post, Debian 12 initial server setup. I will add the link in the description below. If you're new to Hetzner and you don't have an account already, you can just click there on that and you're going to get 20 euros of credit. This is for new Hetzner accounts. If you're on Windows and you want to follow along, install Git and then open Git Bash, and then you will be able to run the same commands that I'm running on Linux. Assuming you already have a Hetzner account, you've logged into your account, let's see how you can deploy Debian 12 and set it up. So come here and choose Cloud. Robot, this is where dedicated servers are, but we want to use Cloud. So I'll click there on Cloud. If you don't have a project already, you can always create a new project. Just give it a name, and in that project you can add everything like servers, load balancers, and so on. In this case, I will use the test project to create a server. I'm going to choose Falkenstein. The image, of course, we want Debian 12. So Debian 12. And then the type of server, you can have shared virtual CPU or dedicated CPU. In this case, we're going to go with the shared CPU. These are the normal VPSs. These are also VPSs, but the CPU is not shared, it's dedicated. So in this case, I can go with, so I can see certain servers are not available here. Let's see if they're available in a different location. Yeah, so if I choose a different location, I can see that all the servers are there. I'm going to choose CX32. So on top of this, there are also Ampere servers. If you want to use ARM processors, then you can select those there. But of course, I want to go with Intel or AMD, the AMD 64 processors. And that's why I'm choosing that. Networking, I want a public IPv4. I want a IPv6 as well. Private networking, I don't need private networking for this. SSH key, I'm just going to do this without an SSH key. The password should be sent to you via email. Volumes, I don't need volumes. Firewalls, I don't need to work with firewalls. Backups, always enable backups if this is a production server. Placement groups, I don't need to work with that. I don't need to labels. I don't have any labels for this server or previous labels that I can work with. Cloud config, I don't need to work with cloud init, so I'm just going to leave that. And one thing that is important, make sure you add a fully qualified domain name for the name here, and this is going to get added as your server host name, and that's important. So make sure it's a fully qualified domain name. That is a domain that when you add DNS records to, it can be accessed. I can just confirm everything is as it should. Helsinki, most importantly, Debian 12. The rest doesn't really matter. So I'm going to create and buy now. When you open your email, you're going to get your password and the IP there. So this is what I need. I'm just going to copy the password. Copy, and I will put it here on VS Code. I will also copy my IP. All right, so let's come and log into the server for the first time. So I will do SSH. So if you're on Windows, open Git Bash to follow along with me. Root, and then @ and then the IP. So on terminal in Linux, you can paste by doing Ctrl+Shift+V. On Git Bash, you can do Shift Insert. Enter. Type yes. Enter. our root password is that. Copy. Control-Shift-V to paste. You won't see any output. Press enter. There you go. You need to change your password. So current password is that. Copy. I'm just going to Control-Shift-V to paste, enter, and then new password. Set a new password, 0p. Copy. Control-Shift-V, enter. Control-Shift-V to confirm the password. Okay, so the password has been changed for the root user. SSH into the server. We've logged into the server. The next step is to update the server. Let's update the server and then install these applications there. Control-Shift-V to paste, enter. The next step, once the server is updated, is to create an admin user. So to create a user in Debian, you're going to do that. This is the name of the user. You can change that name to whatever you prefer, and definitely make sure you change the name to something different. And then the user mode, user mode is used to modify a user. In this case, it's going to add a user to a group, and it's going to add the user to the sudo group, and the user being added is that. So I'm going to copy this, and this one, I can't run it with anything else because once I run this, I'm going to need to confirm if the new user can use sudo. Let's wait for this to complete. There we go. Updates are complete. All the applications we were to install are already installed. Control L to clear the screen. Control-Shift-V. So enter a new password for this user. And I'm just going to use the same password. Control-Shift-V. Control-Shift-V. So the password is changed. So for this, I'm just going to skip this by pressing enter. Is the information correct? Yes, I'm just going to press enter. All right, the next thing that we need to do here is to confirm that this user that we've created can use sudo. And then later on, we are going to disable the root user from logging into the server. And then we can use this user to manage the server using sudo. So the next step is to confirm that we can log in. So of course, I don't want to type on terminal. So I'm just going to copy my IP here, Control-C, bring it here, Control-V, and the user, your new user, we want to test if this user can log in. So to log in, of course, you've seen you can log in using SSH, and the user at that IP. So I'm going to Control-C to copy that. I'll open a different terminal window to confirm if I can log in. Control-Shift-V, SSH, your user and IP, enter. And then the password, copy, Control-Shift-V. There you go. You can log in you have logged in with the new user. The next step is to confirm if the new user can use sudo. So I'm going to copy, enter the password for the user, Control-Shift-V. So it says your user is not in the sudoers file. Okay, let's just reboot. Maybe that is the issue here. I'm just going to do reboot as the root user and give the server some time to restart. This side as well, I will log in with the user I've just created. And after rebooting the server, you're going to see now the user has been added to the sudo users. So all you needed to do was to reboot the server. So the next step is to set up SSH key authentication for your server. So the first step is to generate the SSH key. So I'm going to chain these commands to save time. So I'm going to come here. Here, what you're doing is you're creating a directory, and the directory will be in your home folder called .ssh if it doesn't already exist, and the keys will be stored in that directory. The next step, we'll generate the keys, and the keys will be of this type, ed25519 key. So that resembles the type that defines the type of key. And then the file name for our key will be this. So this is a folder we've created up here, and in that folder we're going to create an SSH key called this, an SSH key pair called that. You can change the name of that key, you can change the name of that folder to whatever you prefer. So I already have a key like this, so at some point it's going to ask me, when I run the command, it's going to ask me if I want to override. So in case you don't want to ever override your keys, you just create a different folder, or you give the keys a different name. So maybe there it can be key 2, but I'm not going to change the name. Once we generate the key, step 2 is to copy the key to your server. So to copy the key is going to require SSH copy ID and the identity of the public key. This is a key that has been generated, and then your user and your IP. So I'm going to copy this last bit, copy. So remember, it's just one command that has been formatted down here. So SSH copy ID, and I should remove the extra spaces because sometimes it creates a problem. Your user is that, your IP, we just need to copy the IP from there, and I will replace the IP. Make sure you replace everything that you've changed, everything that you edited. Make sure you replace it. For example, if you give the key a different name, if you gave your user a different name, make sure you replace that. So create the key, generate the key, create the folder, generate the key pair, and then add the key to your server. And then after that, we need to log in with this key. So I'm just running all of this in one line. There's no point running, waiting. So that's why I'm putting them in VS Code together. And then after that is to log in with the key, assuming it's already been added to your server. So I'm just going to copy this, and to log in with the key, all you need to do is SSH and your user and IP, and then the identity of your key that was generated. So let me bring that here. Paste and remove these extra spaces. These are just extra white space. Okay, so SSH, your user and IP, and then the identity of the key. So this is a private key. So something I haven't mentioned up here is when you're adding the key to the server, you're adding the public key. And then we'll move on to this after we've tested that we can log in with the key. We are creating the directory, and then we are generating the key, and then we add the key to the server, and then we try to log in with the key. So here, of course, I will need to replace my key with the key that I generated. So make sure you get the correct key. That is a correct key. So starting again, folder created, key generated, key added to the server. Key is being tested if I can log in with it. So I'm going to copy. So for this, you need to run this on the local computer. And I can open a new terminal window here, and I will paste all the commands that I've just copied. So press enter. Do you want to overwrite the key that already exists? Type Y, press enter. So now the key is being generated. That's why it's asking you, do you want to enter a passphrase? And if you want to enter a passphrase, you can enter a passphrase for your key. In my case, I'm going to skip it. Skip. Okay. So once you see this, the key has been generated successfully. So the next step, it's running the next command, trying to add the key to our server. So enter the password for the user. The password for the user that you're trying to set up the SSH key for. Enter the password, Control Shift V, paste. So the key has been added. So the next step is going to try to log in with it. And the fact that you can see panel, that means that our key was created successfully and we've been able to log in with it. We can continue with this terminal. I'm just going to do Control L. So now that I'm logged in as this user, we can continue using this user. If you want to switch to the root terminal, you can always do so easily by just doing sudo -s, Control-Shift-V. The next thing in our server setup is to disable the root user from logging in and disable password authentication. So what's happening here is that we're going to add 2 lines into a custom file. So this file will be inside of this directory as a custom SSH configuration file. Once the file is created, that is added, you're going to restart SSH, and that's going to, in one line, basically disable the root user and password authentication. So before I even do anything, let me just try to run this and see if it's going to run. Basically, there's another file in there. There might be another file in there that might affect if this is going to work. So first things first, I'm going to run this. So let me just run it and see what happens. Okay, so the fact that this ran probably means that this file existed. So what I'm going to do now is run the above. So this is another custom configuration file that would affect how our SSH is working. That's why you just rename it, and by renaming it, you essentially disable it. So I'm going to copy that, Control-Shift-V, enter. And now, if I was to try to log in as the root user or log in as the other user without an SSH key, I should get an error. So that's what I'm going to test next. So let's come here and I'm going to try to log in with this. Copy. Let me just open up a new terminal here. I'm just going to paste, enter. You can see permission denied, public key. At the same time, if I try to log in as a root user, I should receive the same error. There you go. So that is done. So if you need to log in, you're going to have to enter the identity of the private key. So the private key was this. Enter. There you go. So to log in, you need an SSH key, and the root user is now not allowed to log into the server. And then the next step after that is firewall setup. So if you're going to install HDTP, a control panel, or any other control panel that comes with a firewall, there are certain applications, turnkey applications, that automatically set up the firewall for you. In that case, you don't need to install firewall, and you don't need to enable it, and you damn sure don't need to allow any services. In this case, these services. In my case, I'm just going to copy this. Basically, it's going to install UFW, enable it, and allow SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS. Enter. And of course, it's going to ask you to confirm that you want to enable it. Press Y and then enter. So now the only ports that are allowed on my server are, if I was to do sudo, make sure that you use sudo UFW starters. Now the only ports that are allowed to access the server are these ports. If you need to allow anything else, you're going to have to allow it manually. And this is going to lead us into the next step of changing SSH port. And the first thing we are going to do is to allow a new SSH port. So that's how to allow a port. Control L to clear the screen, Control-Shift-V to allow the new port. So make sure you change the port number to something else and ensure that the port is not being used by something else. Once you confirm the port is allowed on the firewall, that's when we can edit the SSH configuration. And we're just adding a line of port is that. So make sure you edit this as well. If you changed the port for SSH, that from the one I'm using, and of course use a different port, you don't have to use this, make sure you change it there. And what's happening here is just going to add it, it's just going to append it on the configuration file that we created up here. It's the same configuration. It's just going to append the line of that, and then it's going to restart SSH. So I'm going to copy and Control-Shift-V, enter. So now if I was to try and log in without explicitly defining a port, you'll see that I'm unable to log in. So let's test that. So I'll just open a new window. I'm just going to copy this. That is the login command. So you can actually paste this somewhere and save it. So next time you need to log in, you can just copy and paste. Control-Shift-V, enter, and you'll see that connection on port 22 refused. So if you need to log in, you're going to have to enter the port. You're going to need to define the port. So -P 7020 for our port, and then enter, and that's going to log you in. So make sure that you save your login info. Just copy it and save it somewhere. Next time you need to log in, you can just paste it into your terminal. Control-L. Let's see what's next. We need to create a swap file. So let's see if there's a swap already set up. If I do free-h, you'll see that we don't have a swap. So we can create a swap just as a temporary alternative memory. When you run out of space, when you run out of RAM, this can be used as a place where some files can be stored temporarily so that your server doesn't crash. So I'm just going to copy, and remember my server has 7 GB of memory, so a swap of 4 GB would just be enough. Okay, so I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste that in there, and if I need to edit anything, you can edit the amount of the swap. So in my case, let me make it 4 GB. If you have 2 GB of RAM, make it 4 GB. If you have 4 GB of RAM, you can make it 4 GB or 8. If you have 8 GB and above, just make it 8 GB or 4. Either is okay. So in this case, what's happening? We are allocating 4 GB to that file, and then we're going to change permissions for that file, and you can change the name of that file if you so wish. If you wish, you can change the name of this file. Okay, and when you change it, make sure you change it everywhere else where the file is mentioned. So once we change the permission for the file, we're going to make swap, turn it into a swap file, and then we're going to turn on the swap. And then this is going to add this line into etc fstub. So whenever your system starts, the swap will still be recognized. So when the system gets rebooted, the swap will still be available. So enter, and that's going to create our swap in just one line. So you can see how putting everything in one line saves time. Server host name, let's just confirm if the host name is accurate, because when you were deploying the server, I told you to use a fully qualified domain name. And if you did that, then your server probably has the host name already set up. Control-L to clear the screen. Let me just switch to the other user so that we can be in the same space. I don't want to be using the root user while you're using the other user. So we can do host name, our host name, enter. So the host name is that, and let's confirm the full host name, and the full host name is that. So we can also confirm if the host name has been added in the etc hosts file. And this is important for mail servers. If you have a mail server, you have to set this up. So if I check, I can see that the loopback IP address is using our host name, and that is okay. So I'm just going to do Control-L and see what's next. If your host name is not set up, you're going to have to change it yourself. Okay, and you can do so like that, like that. Now the next thing is to set up automatic updates. Now I have a video for setting up automatic updates, and I'm not going to do this again. I'll just link to the video in the comments. I'm just going to link to the video in the comments and in the description. So that's an important one. Make sure you watch it and make sure you enable automatic updates, because I know some people usually take a long time before they go into their server, and that's how you'll get hacked. If you're using something that is outdated and is now being exploited in the wild, you will become a victim of malware, ransomware, any of those wares, any of those threats. So make sure you set up automatic updates. I'll put the link in the description, and don't be afraid of automatic updates. It's better for your server to be updated and something goes wrong than to have an outdated server running insecure applications. I see a lot of people who are scared of automatic updates. Don't be scared. Even if you update your server and something goes wrong, you can fix what is wrong, but you can't fix when you have a ransomware on your server. You just have to do away with that server and restore a backup. So make sure you set up automatic updates, and that should end this tutorial. If you don't have a Hetzner account, you can get $20 free credit. And if you have any questions, if you need help setting this up, you can always reach out. Our pricing is there, contact is there. If you need help setting up WordPress control panel, maybe Node.js on your server, Django, just feel free to reach out. All right, that should end the tutorial. If you have any question, feel free to let me know. Hi there, and welcome to this video. In this video, you're going to see how to set up Ubuntu 24.04. So this is an initial server setup for Ubuntu 24.04. Get your Ubuntu 24.04 production ready. If you're on Windows, you can follow along. Just install Git and then open Git Bash, and that will enable you to follow all the commands that I'm going to use. And the commands I will use are all in this post. I will add the link in the description below. This is on bizanosa.com. I will use Vultr for this example. Vultr is a cloud provider. They offer VPS servers, dedicated VPSs as well, GPU servers, cloud GPUs, bare metal servers. If you want to use a GPU server for a few hours, then Vultr has that for you. All the billing for all the servers is done hourly. If you want to try them, I have $300 of free credit in the description below. It will give you access to all the servers that they offer. All right, so let's get started. If you don't have an account, you can create an account with them. If you do, go ahead and log in, and let's deploy Ubuntu 24.04. So I'll come back to my account, then go to products. I don't have a server yet, so I'm just going to deploy server. And I will choose shared CPU. In this example, I'm going to choose my data center as Chicago. I will select high performance. Let me go with Intel for once. And I'm going to select 2 virtual CPUs, 2 GB of RAM. Click on that. Configure. So you can see the pricing is $18. And yet the total price here is $21. That's because of automatic backups. So if you're running a workload, make sure you enable automatic backups. If you don't need it, you can disable it. For the operating system, of course, I'm doing Ubuntu today. So I'm just going to go with Ubuntu 24.04. SSH key, we're not going to add that now, but you can always add your SSH key and select it from there. Server host name, I'll just go with a host name like that. And then for IP, just select IPv6 as well. It is free, so why not? And pretty much that's all I need for my server. I'm going to deploy, give it a few minutes to come online, and then we're going to log in. So the details for your server are here. If you want to log in, you can copy your IP. I'll open terminal. If you're on Windows, as I've said, download and install Git, and then open Git Bash. So I'll SSH into my new server. The user is root. Enter. Type yes to confirm. get the password from here, Control Shift V, enter, Control L to clear the screen, and I can update apt. Apt update. Let's see if we have any updates. 7 packages can be upgraded. Let's upgrade them. So apt upgrade -y, enter, apt upgrade -y. There we go. The updates are complete. Now let's get started with what we have here. So I'll add the link to this post in the description. If you want to follow along, you can just go to the link and follow along. So we've deployed the server, we've logged in, I've updated the server. So the first thing, we can create a user. Instead of using the default user, you can create a user. Use any username that you prefer there. I'm just going to use the example, which is here. So first, create a user, Control Shift V, add user, the space at the beginning, remove the spaces. I'll remember to remove the spaces. So enter a password for the user. For the rest of the items, just press enter to escape, or rather to skip them. The new user has been created. Now let us add the user to the sudo group. This way we can use it to manage the server. Copy, Control L to clear the screen, Control Shift V to paste. If you are on Git bash, Shift insert to paste. So you need to confirm if this user that you've just created can actually use the sudo command successfully. So let's open a new terminal window. Control Shift T, copy, it's the new user. And then once you log in, the most important thing is for you to confirm if you can actually use sudo. So you'll do sudo apt update and enter the password for the user. There you go. Well and good. Now you can use this user to manage your server. And if you're feeling pretty lazy, you don't want to type sudo all the time, you can actually switch to the root user from this user. Just do sudo su dash enter, and now you're like the root user again. You can just work without adding sudo. So I'll exit out of the root user, and for this other one as well, I can just close this window now that I have a user that I can use to manage the server. At some point, we're going to disable the root user from logging into our server. So let's come and see what is the next step. We've tested the user. Now the next step is to set up SSH key login for that user. So we are doing this for the user we've just created because at some point we're going to disable the root user. So that means we're doing this for the user we've just created. So this is done on your local computer. And if you're on Windows, this is going to work for you as well. Just make sure you're following along with Git bash. The first line will create a directory. You can call the directory whatever you prefer. And then for SSH keygen, we're going to generate a key of type ed25519, and then we are going to put it in the folder we've created and we'll give it that name. If you want to change anything, especially the name, you can do so. So I'm going to copy that, come back, and make sure you're running this on the local computer. You're not running this on your server. So open a new terminal window. Control Shift T on my terminal here will open a new tab of the terminal, and I can run those things on my local computer. Paste, enter. So there's probably a space issue. So just make sure you remove these spaces. Sometimes I add them for ease of readability, but it seems like they're affecting everything. There you go. So just one space is enough for each of this, and it seems like my terminal is pretty strict about that. So enter the passphrase. You can enter a passphrase. A passphrase is simply like a password for the key. So every time you use the key, every time you want to log in with the key, you'll need to enter the passphrase. In this case, I'm just going to press enter. That means I won't set a passphrase for the key. Enter and just confirm. There you go. Now the keys have been generated and you'll find them there. You'll find the keys there. So this is a key that we need to add to our server. So I'll do Ctrl L to clear the screen, and we'll continue by adding the key to the server. So you'll use SSH copy ID to copy the key, SSH copy ID -I, and then the public key, and then that is the user plus the host for your server. Copy this first part up to .pub, Ctrl+Shift+V. I want to add it for this user. Copy, Ctrl+Shift+V, enter. So the password for this user is the one I set. There you go. The key has now been added for this user, and we can use it to log in. So to log in, you'll just use SSH once again, plus the user and the identity of the key. So let us just get things from here. Ctrl A. I want to delete all of this. And then SSH user, and then the identity of the key -I, and the identity of our key is that. Let's remove all the spaces. So the identity of your key is that. These are the keys that you use to log in. This is a key that you use to log in. That is the private key. And then enter. And there you go. Now you're logged in with your SSH key. That's how to log in with your SSH key. Let's go back and see it again. I'll exit to log out. Enter. Ctrl L. And there. So SSH, the user and the IP, the identity of the key, there. So that's how you log into your server now that you have an SSH key. The next step is to disable password authentication. So when somebody needs to log into your server, they'll always need the key. So disable the root user from logging in to your server. So we are going to add this by creating a custom configuration file under the SSH configuration directory. So if I look into that directory, probably there are other things there. Let's just check. ls/etc. Right, so you can see there is something in there. Let me see what's inside here. This was created by Cloud Init sudo. So you can see this one allows password authentication. So you can actually just edit this file. Instead of creating your own, you can edit the file, or you can just remove it. In this case, let me remove it. Sudo rm let's create our own configuration file with vim. Ctrl+Shift+V, enter, and you're going to copy this. So this is going to disable root, login, and password authentication. So if somebody has to log in, they have to have an SSH key, and they also should not be the root user. Escape, Shift ZZ, and you'll need to restart SSH. Control Shift V, enter. I can just look at this to see what is the issue. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, Control A, sudo, Control E. Instead of X, let me use F. Enter. Failed to start SSH. Okay, so there's some spaces in what I've added, so it's just an issue of space. Control C. In the configuration that I created, it's just space. I'm going to remove all those spaces, and I added the spaces just for ease of readability, but it seems they're affecting everything. So let me edit again. So permit root login. So I'll just use a single space. Before you get this, I'll make sure to remove all the spaces in all of the commands. But now you know if there's any issue you experience, it's probably due to spacing. Shift ZZ to save. Let's try again. Restart SSH, and now it has restarted successfully. Control L, and I'll try to log in now. You can see now I have not shown the path of my SSH key. So it's going to tell me I need a key to log in. Enter. So permission denied, you need a public key. All right, so let's try and log in with the root user. And it's going to show you the same error, and that's because the root user doesn't have an SSH key added, and they also are not allowed to log in. So that's how to disable the root user and the password authentication. The next part is one of the most important things you can do for your server, and that is to set up a firewall. So on Ubuntu, you'll usually find that Ubuntu will come with UFW, but just get used to using NF tables. NF tables is currently actively being developed and improved, and it is the replacement for IP tables. So for that reason, I'm going to use NF tables as my server firewall. First of all, remove UFW and IP tables, and I'll do Control Shift V to paste. Enter. So IP tables and UFW have been removed. The next step is to activate NF tables, because it usually comes by default in almost every Linux distro. So let's copy that, and we're going to enable it, enable, and start it. So if I was to do systemctl starters, you'll see now it is active and it's enabled. When the system starts, it will start with the system. Control L to clear the screen, come back, and on Ubuntu, this is the default configuration file, and you can just use this file. You don't have to create a new file, just edit the default file. Control Shift V, enter, and inside here you can see there are these rules. By default, these are not doing anything. They're pretty much allowing everything. So we can delete everything from here. Let's say 59DD to delete everything there. And then I'm just going to copy this configuration. This is based on the NF tables wiki. You can see it's just pretty much the same thing. If you want to add any rule, maybe you want a new SSH port, you can add it there, or you can add it in a new line, and we're going to add that as well in a moment. So Control Shift V. So these are the ports that are allowed. If you want to add any port, you can add it. So I added this here as an example, but let me just add it in its own line. So let's say I want to add a custom SSH port, and I will change the SSH port momentarily. So let's say I want to add my SSH port here as well. So I'm going to make sure to press escape, and then I will copy this line. I'll just do YYP to copy and paste it below, and I can go into insert mode by pressing I, delete everything in there. So if it's only one item, I don't have to put it in the braces. So let's say my new SSH key will be 2090, and you can save. If you want to add any new ports, maybe you want to add the ports for mail, you can add port 25. You can add port 25. Maybe you're using cPanel and you want to open the ports for cPanel, and so on. So that's pretty much the gist. You just add the port you need and it will be allowed in the firewall. So escape, shift ZZ, and then we can restart NF tables, or rather, these are some aliases I usually use. It seems I haven't added them here. So systemctl reload. Let me just reload, and don't forget your sudo systemctl reload NF tables. There we go. Control L, and you can look at your current rules. nft list rule set, sudo. So you can see this. Okay, so since I removed the first configurations, let me restart the server. If you reload, it just reloads any new rules that it finds. So let me just restart it. Systemctl restart. There you go. Now you can see it's only using the rules that I've added. Okay, so let's come back and see what is next. Firewall done. The next item, Ubuntu 24.4, change the SSH port. So in the configuration file that we created earlier, we're just going to add the new port. So copy, Control L, Control Shift V to open that file. And as usual, this spacing, I add them for aesthetics, for ease of readability, but that is now working against me, as you can see. Shift A to go into insert mode, and then I'm going to enter port 2090, escape, Shift ZZ. Let's restart SSH daemon/socket. So on Ubuntu, depending on the system you get, Ubuntu 24.4, you might find that it's running as a socket or the daemon itself. In this case, that's why I've added both commands. The first one will just restart SSH, and that will restart the daemon. And then the next one, in case you're using SSH socket, this will reload it and add the new port that you set up. So let's copy this. So if this is not running for me, I'm going to get an error, but don't worry about it. We're going to test and make sure that the new port is accessible. So Control Shift V. So the second one failed. SSH socket. This one as well, I'm going to just put it in its own line. And this is the one that failed. Control Shift C, Control Shift V. Yeah, that's the one that failed. At this point, we have changed the SSH port. So let's just confirm. In certain cases, you're not going to receive this error. It seems like on Vultr, they have disabled the SSH socket. So let's go to Control Shift T. And we are going to Let me get my login here. I don't want to type. That's the last place where I logged in. So let me copy that. I don't want to type. Control-Shift-V. And let's try to log in. You can see now port 22, connection refused, because this port is not our current SSH port. If you want to log in now, you have to explicitly define the port. And in this case, you'll just use -p. And our port was 2090. If your port is different, use your port. And I do suggest you don't use 2090. Lots of people will probably use this, so use a different one. There you go. Now you're logged in with your new port. And you might also want to reboot the server just to make sure that you're not, you want to reboot with sudo. You want to reboot to make sure that, yes, you can still log in. So let's give it a moment to restart, and then we can try and log in again. It seems like it's back up. It is back up. So let's log in again. There you go. You can log in after reboot. That's important to check before you do a lot of things. Just make sure you confirm that you're able to log in. You can create a swap file, but I saw that Vultr creates a swap file for you. Let's confirm this. free-h. And you can see they create a swap file for you. So you don't need to create one because it's already created there on Vultr. On other cloud platforms, you probably need to create it, especially if you have less than 4 GB of RAM and you're going to run lots of things on the server. And then change the server host name. So when you're deploying a server on Vultr, make sure you use the host name that you want to use. Like in my case, that's what I did. So if I was to look at host name, let's look at the full host name. You'll see that is my host name. And the good thing with this is that it has also added it. It has also added this on my etc hosts. So this might be important if you're running something like Kubernetes or you're running mail servers and servers need to talk to each other through the host. So you can see here, it's added to that. If it is not here, you have to go into this file and edit the template, and it's going to show up here when you reboot. If you change it in the etc hosts, the change will not persist. So I'm not going to go into this. Depending on your cloud provider, if you need help with it, let me know. I can create a short video for it, but it doesn't really matter. If you're using a cloud platform like Hetzner Vultr DigitalOcean, they usually allow you to add the host name for your server and then set the time zone. Let's copy this. Control-L, Control-Shift-V. Let's select Africa and I can search for N. Nairobi. There you go. Now, if I was to look at my date, it's going to show me the right time. Let's see if there's anything that's remaining. Okay, now let me just do, before I end the video, at least let me do one thing for you. And this is also important. You can install fail to ban, or you can also use CrowdSec. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to use CrowdSec. So I'm just going to install it on Ubuntu. So that's going to add the repository that's going to install CrowdSec. And this is going to install the firewall bouncer. This is what's responsible for blocking items with CrowdSec. You can read more about CrowdSec from their documentation. Control-L, Control-Shift-V, enter. And I'd like to add that when you're installing CrowdSec, make sure you install it as the last item, because when you do that, it's going to automatically pick up every item you have, whether it's Nginx, Apache, MariaDB. It's going to pick up all these items, and it's going to download the right collections that can secure those items. So it's always best to install it as the last item, but even if you don't install it as a last item, you can still reset it. You can still set it up after you install all the items you're installing. So if you come here, you'll see that there are certain collections that it installed, and that is based off of this. So it detected that we are on Linux, and it also detected that we're using SSH, OpenSSH. So if you had more items, it would have detected all those items and then downloaded the right collections that would secure your server. But that is not a problem. We're going to see how to fix that in a moment. So for now, if I was to do CS CLI, this is the interface for CrowdSec, the CLI interface. So CS CLI metrics. So if you do metrics, you can just see what it has picked up. For now, it has picked up Valog, and these are authentications for your Linux server and SSH. So that's what it has picked up, but we can add more items. So for example, let's install Apache and Nginx. Sudo, and we're going to see how we can make CrowdSec detect those items. Install Apache 2, and let's also install Nginx as the last item that we'll do in this Ubuntu 24.4 initial server setup, making it production ready. So by default, usually Apache will be running. I know it's already running, but Nginx, I need to start it up. So I can't start Nginx because it's using the same port as Apache. So first of all, let's go and change the port for Apache. And at the same time, CrowdSec also uses port 8080 on the local host. So make sure nothing else is using that port. So let's change the port for Apache, Control L, VI etc. I don't know where this is, but I'm going to find it. Apache, and let me see where it is. Which file do I need to edit here? Ports, yeah, ports. Go to ports, tab, and let's change the listening port for Apache. I will change it to, let's use port 8081. 8081. And then for SSL as well, we can make this listen on port 8443, or whichever port you want. The good thing is that if you have Apache and Nginx on the same server, then it means that these ports will not be accessible from outside of should not be accessible from outside of your Linux server, because you use Nginx to reverse proxy these items. That's the point of having Nginx and Apache on the same server. So Shift ZZ to save. Oh, I forgot to use sudo. Shift ZQ. I always forget to use sudo. So what I'm going to do, let me just go to be the root user, and I can run this. Control Shift C, Control Shift V, enter. Shift A to edit at the end of the line. We chose to go with port 8081 here as well. Let's change the listening port for SSL to 8443 here as well. Let's change the listening ports to 8443. Escape, Shift ZZ, and then go here again under sites enabled, and the default configuration. Here for the default configuration as well, let's change this to listen to the port we have set up, which is port 8081. Anything else with a port here? Nothing. So escape, Shift ZZ, and then now we can restart. Now we can start Apache. without doing that, now we can, start Nginx. Systemctl. Let us just restart Apache first. Restart Apache 2. Enter. And then we can enable and start Nginx. Enter. There we go. If you don't change the port, Nginx is not going to start. So the point of the the point of this part why I installed Apache and Nginx is to show you that if you want to make CrowdSec recognize those items, you can just do cs CLI setup, and this is going to recognize those items. Detect and configure services, yes. So you can see that when I run it the second time, it has noticed that we have Linux, Nginx, Apache, and so on. Enter, and it's going to install everything it needs. And now you need to reload CrowdSec. Control-Shift-C, Control-Shift-V, enter, Control-L. Now if you do cs CLI metrics, it has not taken the logs for Nginx yet, but they should be taken. And if by any chance logs are not taken, you can actually show CrowdSec where the logs are. CrowdSec does not automatically know where all the logs are. So if you install it like this and you just leave it assuming that CrowdSec now knows where everything is, that's usually not the case. CrowdSec, sometimes you need to guide it and let it know, here are my logs, these are the logs I want you to pass, and ensure that there are no bad actors scanning my websites. So here I'm going to go into vi/etc CrowdSec, and here we need to go into acquisitions.d, and for whichever item that you want to show it the logs, let's just do tab. So I'm just pressing tab and I want to see all the items which are here. So we have Apache, we have Nginx. So let's go to Nginx. So you can see this is where it's looking for logs, right? So it's looking for all the logs here. So any logs that you have, they will be passed. But right now we don't have any website that has any log there. So let's give it at least one log that I know exists. So let's do yyp. I just want to copy that line, varlog. Let's confirm something, Control Z. And so I just Control Z to put that in the background. Control L, tail-f. Let's go to var. Okay, there's nothing in those files, so probably that's why it doesn't bothered, but let's try and go. Okay, you can see now there's something here. At least we have something in the log files. Control C. So and now you can see the Nginx logs have been identified. So let's go back to how to show it where the logs are, especially if you use systems like something like CyberPanel. The logs are just in a very weird place, so you might need to tell your system where the logs are. So let's do FG to go back to this item that we put in the underground. So if there is any log file somewhere, maybe it's in home, press I to go into insert mode, home, logs, and they're in multiple files. You just want to find any item named log and add it there. You can just add the wildcard there, and it's going to find any log files in home logs. If there are files in there, it will look for all files, and it will also pick up all logs. If you know what I'm saying, then you understand it. If you don't, I don't know how I can help you, but I hope you understand it. Shift ZQ so that we don't save that, and that's pretty much ends this video. What I've done is I've tried to help your Ubuntu 24.4 become production ready. So I'll add the link to this post. If you experience any problems, let me know. If you need help with things like this, you can always contact us. All our pricing is there, publicly displayed for you. You don't have to contact me to ask for price. Everything is displayed there. One-time support and Bizenosa Expert Care, which is our Linux support subscription. So this can work on any VPS. You don't have to use Vultr for this. Any VPS, this will work for you. If you experience any problem, feel free to contact us. We are ready to help you for a very small fee, very small price. It's not that expensive for now. See you next time. If you experience any problems with this that you need help with, just leave a comment below. I'll see how to help you. Until next time, in another video. In this video, you are going to see how to use Ansible for the Debian 12 initial server setup. So I have multiple of Debian Ubuntu initial server setup tutorials, and here's a link for anybody that wants to do it manually. If you want to do it manually, you can come here, follow all these steps, and there's also a video you can follow. But in this case, let's use Ansible for the setup. So this Ansible playbook is going to upgrade packages, install specific packages. It's also going to create a new user, set up SSH authentication for the new user, set up time zone, fail to ban, server host name, add a swap file, configure unattended upgrades, enable UFW if you want to use UFW. On this point, I want to add that if you're going to install a control panel like HTTP or Cyberpanel, usually they set up the firewall for you, so you can comment out this part. It's also going to disable the root login and password authentication and change the SSH port. So first of all, let's get the code, and then I'm going to explain it. So at least you need to know Ansible. If you're going to use this, you don't have to be an expert, but you should be familiar with Ansible. So I'm going to download the file, save, I'll open it, extract here, Ansible Debian setup. There it is. Let me open this in my terminal. I'll open the terminal here, open terminal here. You can use whichever editor you want to use. In my case, I'm just opening it here because it's easier to demonstrate when you're using the terminal. So I can do a tree and explain everything. We have the Ansible configuration file. I believe this is just a sample file. I might have forgotten to delete it, but forget about that. And then we'll have an includes folder. In the includes folder, there is an unattended upgrades configuration file that will be uploaded to our server. And then there's also this swap playbook. This is a task that will enable swap, and this is also another task .yaml that will enable unattended upgrades, automatic upgrades for Debian. And then our inventory will be there. We're going to edit that. This is what will run. We'll look at it in a moment, the playbook. And then this is an optional thing, okay? The role that we have here, this is a role that is based on this original role from this fella. If you want to search for it, you can do Ansible Galaxy role search HTTP. You're going to see this role is there, and I put it here to edit it because it's a bit old, but I just added it here for you. So in case you want to install HTTP after the initial server setup, you can do so. But at the same time, I will do another video for how to install HTTP with this Ansible role. Okay, so let's look at the playbook and see what we are working with. Control L to clear the screen. VI tab. edit that playbook, and I put everything in one playbook, but you can put them in different playbooks. You can put them in different tasks, different roles if you want to, but I decided to put everything here because it's much easier for you to follow along in this situation. So one thing that I added here that will help you if you're interested in that is this vars file. This is an Ansible vault. So if you have any details that you want to hide, like maybe the username, the password, they can be put here. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment because we need to create that file if you're going to go with the same step. If you don't want to create the Ansible playbook, the Ansible vault for some details, what you can do is you can just add the literal details here. For example, for the new user, instead of getting the value there, you can put the new username. Maybe it's admin, just put the name there. Password as well, remove that and put the name there. And then all the other details are there, they're defined. You can change your SSH, you can change your host name as well there. Time zone, these are just variables that you can change. These are just variables that you can change and they will be used at some point. So when it comes to the swap file as well here, you'll see that you can change the details for the swap file to whatever you prefer. And then the size of your swap, you can also change the size. If you want 4 GB, you can change that there. And then these are additional packages that you're going to install. So if there's anything that you want to use and you want to install it with this Ansible playbook, you can add it there as well. And then let's come down to the tasks. Now, as for the tasks, update the package and then upgrade all the packages and then install additional packages. This is going to loop through all the list of packages we have here and then create new sudo user. You're going to create a sudo user and the name of the user will be taken from what you put here. So remember, I still have to show you how to set up the Ansible vault to make sure that this works. And this is probably how you should do it, especially if you're going to hide, if you want to hide your password. Configure SSH for the new user. This is a part that's going to add the SSH key. Okay, the SSH key, I should have put it as a variable up there, but it seems I didn't. So you can just add it here, wherever your SSH key is, dot under your user home name, your user home directory, dot SSH, the location of the public key. Make sure you're uploading the public key. And then you want to, and then it will be uploaded to the home directory of the new user into authorized keys. And then you can set the time zone. The time zone variable is also up there. Fail to burn will also be enabled. It's already been installed as one of the additional packages. And then it's just going to add this into the fail to burn jail.local and set the host name and then create a swap file. So this is going to include a task, and that task is inside of the includes directory. So inside here we have the swap file and the unattended upgrades that will also be included. So you can look at those to see what they do and edit them accordingly. And then auto upgrades, this will also include a file. This will also include a task from the includes directory. Configure the firewall. So here the UFW will be enabled, and then it's going to add this rule. So if you need to add any other port, you can just add it in a similar manner. The way I added 45 here, you can add another port. Just add it down along with this. Maybe you want to enable SMTP ports. You can enable port 25. Just add it down there. Port 587. You can enable it there. But as I said, if you're installing a control panel like HTTP or CyberPanel, you can simply comment out all this. Okay, up to that point, comment it out and then configure SSH port, root login and password authentication. So this is the last thing I do because it involves changing the port. And once you change the port, of course, you're going to need to change that in the inventory file if you want to be able to access the server again. For this demonstration, I want to use Vultr. I need a real cloud server. I can do this on my local computer with a virtual machine from VirtualBox or Vagrant, but I'd rather get a real cloud server just to show you how it will go. So let me deploy a server. If you don't have a Vultr account and you're new to Vultr, you can test it for $300. Link in the description below. I will also add links to other cloud providers if you need to use any of the others. Here I will go with shared CPU. I don't care about the location, I just need a server, and I can go with AMD high frequency. Alright, AMD high frequency doesn't exist. Let's go with AMD high performance. Take the $12 one. So I'm charged hourly, so it doesn't really matter. And I will continue. I want to use Debian. I'll select Debian 12. SSH keys. You'll need to log in with an SSH key, so make sure you add it. On Vultr, you can go to your account. Then there's a link for SSH. Add your SSH key. Add your public SSH key. So I'm going to use that here. Host name on Vultr. Make sure you add your host name. So I'll just use the same. This is just a sample that I added here. Copy, come back, and I'll use this as the host name and the server name. IPv6, I don't mind an IPv6. Automatic backups, disable automatic backups. I think that's pretty much it. I will deploy the server. I just need an IP. Click on it. I want to get the IP and add it to my inventory. So I'm going to use IPv4, copy the IPv4, come back, Control L to clear the screen, edit the inventory. So if you have multiple servers you want to initially set up, you can add all the IPs here. In my case, let me uncomment that because it's currently not running. I'm just going to Control-Shift-V to paste in the IP I've gotten from Vultr, and at the same time I haven't changed my SSH port, so let me comment this out at this point. Once I run my Debian setup Ansible playbook, I will come back and uncheck it, because after it runs, the port will have changed to that. Shift ZZ to save. What is the next thing I need to do before I run this? So also make sure that here you have the correct SSH key, private key for that server. Now the next thing that I want to show you, if you go back to the playbook, up here we have this verse file, and this is what's giving these values. Okay, so if I don't add anything here, it's going to fail. It's going to tell me these values don't exist. So I need to create an Ansible vault for this. I'll just copy this in advance. Control-Shift-C, Control-L to clear the screen. So I need to create an Ansible vault. One way that I show you how to do this is you add a vault file password. So if you go to the Ansible configuration, you'll see here I've added a vault password file. You can change the name and create a file called this and called whatever you want. And this is going to make sure that every time you use Ansible Vault, it doesn't ask you for a password. That's what I'm trying to do. And the password is used for decrypting files. So let's do this in real and see what I mean. So the vault password, I need to create this. It doesn't exist. Shift ZQ. First of all, let me create a file. I believe it was called .ant-pass. And then inside of this file, just enter a password. Just enter a password that will be used for decryption and encryption password for everything that you put in Ansible Vault. Escape, Shift, ZZ. And once I do this, if I was to do Ansible Vault -h create, so you can create, you can decrypt, you can edit, you can view, all of that. Control L, Ansible Vault, create user. So normally you'll see in most cases People use .yaml, but I prefer to use it without the YAML. That way it can confuse someone. They won't know what it is. So Ansible Vault, create user, Ctrl+Shift+V. Let's add edit. Let's add a user here. So what will be the new user for your server? You can call it new admin 25. That will be the new user. And let's also give this user a password. So that is the password. So everything that you want to hide, you can always put in an Ansible Vault, and it's not that difficult to do, as you can see. So there we go. So we've hidden our username and password in an Ansible Vault. If I save this, Shift ZZ, and if I try to view it, cut user tab, you're going to see now it's encrypted and no one can read it. If you want to read it, you can do Ansible Vault view. It will show you the details. If you want to edit it as well, maybe you want to add more items in this vault, you can do edit, Ansible Vault edit user, and it's going to allow you to edit it. Shift ZQ. We have set up everything we need, right? So let's just see if there's anything I've forgotten by running the playbook. Ansible playbook Debian.yaml. Of course, I should have said don't check, but just type yes to continue. So I'm just going to pause and let it run, and if anything comes up, I will resume recording. So see you in a minute. All right. After waiting for a while, the playbook has completed running. If I try to ping the server at this point, I will not be able to ping it because the SSH port has changed. So let's just confirm that. So it shouldn't be able. Let's go and try and log in. Let's try and log into the server and confirm some of these things. Ctrl+Shift+T, and I want to confirm some of these things. Let me get the IP address again. Ctrl+Shift+V. SSH connection refused. So that's a point that is working. I don't know why on this end it's still able to. Probably it's just being cached. If I try it again, it should not work. So just give it time and it's going to pick up on that. So if you want to log in, you have to explicitly define the port you want to use for logging in. We can confirm UFW status. You can see the ports we added have been added there. And what else do we need to confirm here? Let's look at unattended upgrades. If unattended upgrades, let's see if they've been set up. Let us see, coming up here we can see allowed origins are. This means that it will run because there are allowed origins. Anything else that we can confirm? Let's confirm if it has created our swap free-h. There we go, the swap we created for 2 GB is there. That's how to set up your Debian server with Ansible. And now if you want to connect it, maybe you want to change something, you want to increase the size of the swap. So let's confirm this free-h, it's now 2 GB. Let's say we want to increase the size of our swap file. The first thing I'll need to do is to change the SSH port in the inventory. So 0 to go to the beginning of the line. I will delete that, escape, shift ZZ to save, and then let's go and edit the playbook, and GG to go to the beginning of the file. And then what I want to change here is the size of my swap. So let's make this 4. Let's make it 4. I to go into edit mode, enter 4, escape, shift ZZ. Let's run the playbook again. Ansible playbook, run the playbook, enter. Once again, let me give it some time, and then I'm going to come back once it's complete. All right, there we go. It's done running. You can see some things were changed. So let's go and confirm that. There you go. You can see now the swap is 4 GB. That is how to set up your Debian server with Ansible. You can download the file. You can download the Ansible playbook and all the files. Here, I've added the link on this post in the description below. So if I come back here and I go back to the playbook, something else I will do in the next video is how to install HTTP using that role I told you about. So if you come down here, you can see I've uncommented installing HTTP, but you can also install HTTP if you wanted to. But first of all, you'll have to go into that role and then edit the various variables for HTTP, such as hostname, admin, password, email, and so on. So those are things you'll need to edit before you run this. You can uncomment this and then run it after changing the variables. So that's something I'll do in the next video. And I can just do it on the same server. Shift ZZ. All right, that's pretty much it for this video. If you see anything that you can improve on the playbook, comment with your code below and we'll test it out and see if we'll use that to improve it, and I can share it with everybody. If you see anything that we can add here, also let me know. I will see how to go about that. That's how to set up your Debian 12 server with Ansible. Until next time. Hi and welcome to this video. In this video, you're going to see how to set up Debian 12 on DigitalOcean. You're going to see how to do a Debian 12 initial server setup for DigitalOcean. So I'm going to use this post. I will put the link in the description. First thing, let's deploy a DigitalOcean Debian 12 droplet. And I'll click there on create droplet. I will choose Frankfurt. Image, of course, I want Debian and I want Debian 12. I will go with the basic shared CPU and I will choose the $14 plan, and I will go with the premium AMD. You can choose any one of this. I don't need additional storage. If this is a production server, just enable backups. It's 20% more or 30% more for a daily backup. And then choose authentication method. I'm not going to use an SSH key. I'm just going to use a password and store the password somewhere where you can remember it. So let me come here and I'm going to open VS Code. I will use this to add any text that I will need, any commands I will need to edit. I will add them on VS Code. So I can generate a password and I'm just going to copy it. So based on the rules, the uppercase cannot be first or the last letter. Copy it. This is going to be our root password. You can add improved metrics and then the host name. Use a host name that is a fully qualified domain name. And by using a fully qualified domain name, you won't have to change the host name later. So I can use something like panel dot So that's pretty much it, and we can just create the droplet. So let the droplet finish deploying, and then we're going to log in, and we'll start the initial server setup. So if you're on Windows, go and download Git, follow along with Git Bash, open Git Bash and follow along with that. In my case, I'm just going to open Terminator. This is a terminal I'm going to be using. We'll log into the server. You can just open it, click on it to open it, and you're going to see everything about your droplet. Click to copy the IP. Let's try to log in. So I will do SSH. The user by default will be root. Ctrl+Shift+V to paste on terminal. Accept by typing yes, enter, and the password, copy, Ctrl+Shift+V to paste. There we go, you're logged in. So I'm just going to copy this and I will add it here just in case I will need it at some point. So if you don't have a DigitalOcean account, you can get $200 credit. You can get $200 of free credit. You can click on that link. I will also add the link in the description below. SSH into the server we've logged in, and then we're going to update the server and then install this. Copy. They're probably already installed, but let's just install them. Ctrl+L, Ctrl+Shift+V to paste. If you're on Git Bash, you can use Shift+Insert to paste. Here, you'll just press Tab to go to OK, and then enter. Next, you're going to add an admin user, and this is the user you're going to use to administrate your server. At some point, we are going to disable the root user from logging in, so that's why you do this. So you can give the user any name. In this case, I'm just going to use the example that I have here. And then after that, we're going to add the user to the sudoers group, so they can do commands like sudo apt update. These are commands that can only be done by the root user, but with sudo, they will be able to do these commands. So let's copy that. Ctrl+L to clear the screen, Ctrl+Shift+V, enter. So give the user a password. I'm just going to skip this by pressing on enter. And then press enter. The new user is now created and added to the sudo group. Now the next step is to make sure that this user can use sudo. We're going to log in on a different tab. Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and the user is, I'm just going to add it here because I might need it. Copy that. I'll open a new terminal. Ctrl+Shift+V to paste. Try to log in as the new user that you've just created. Enter. Now, let's try to do something with sudo. Sudo-s to switch to the root user. See if you can use the sudo command. Enter your user password. Alright, so since we can do this, it means that we are able to use the sudo command. So that means that now you can use the new user to administer your server, to administrate the server as the root user. So I don't need that. I'm just going to close that terminal. And from now on, we can just use the other user. So I'm going to log out of this user, log in as the new user. And then the next step is to set up SSH key authentication for the new user. And after doing that, we're going to disable password authentication and the root login. So of course, the first step is to generate the password. And then we're going to copy the key to our server. And then we're going to log in with the SSH key. So let me just prepare all these commands. And it's going to seem like I'm doing them in one go. So I'm going to copy the first one, which is to generate SSH key. And I'm going to paste it here. I want to add them together. So first we'll create a directory. This is where we'll store the SSH keys, and we're going to generate a key of that type, ed25519 key, and then the file will be stored here. So this is the name of our key. The key that will be generated will be that.pub and that for a private key. Let's come back. So after we generate the key, you need to add the key to your public server, to your server, I mean. I'm just going to copy the second one there. SSH copy ID. So this is going to copy the public key, and that is a key we generated up there. And it's going to copy it for the user we've just created. So I'm going to copy this, the user and the IP. Let's see if there's anything else we can add here. So we can also add in the login. So to log in, we'll do SSH, and then your user and the IP will go there. And now we will be logging in with the identity of our key, our private key that has been generated. So the key, private key generated is that. Control V. Okay, so let me just go through it one last time before I run the entire thing. So I'm going to run it from there. Create directory for your keys. You can give the directory any name. And then we're going to generate a key of that type. And the key will be stored there. And the name of the key will be that. And then after that, we're going to add our key to our server. And we're going to do that. And this is the key we are going to add, the key, the public key that has been generated. And we're going to add that key for this user on this IP. And then finally, we're going to use that key to log in our user. And this time around, we're logging in with the private key. So I'm just going to run this together. Copy, and I need to run this on my local computer. So I'm going to open terminal here. I can open another instance of Terminator, and then I'm going to paste all the commands there. So I'll press enter. You can see I already have a key with that name because I did a tutorial for Vultr using the same steps. So if this is your situation and you don't want to overwrite the key, you can just change the name of the folder or the name of the key. For me, I'm just going to press Y to overwrite the key. I'm not using it anywhere else, so I can just overwrite the key. You can enter a passphrase for your key. In my case, I'm just going to press enter to skip the passphrase. Okay, the key has been generated. Now it's going to the next command, trying to add it to our server. And now it's asking for the password for this user. This is the user you created earlier. Enter the password for that user, and then eventually it's going to try to log in with the server with a key, and you can see we are now in the server. All right, so I just chained them together to save me some time. I don't want to type wait. Control L to clear the screen. And what is next? So we've generated our key. The next step is to disable the root user from logging in. To do that, we can create our custom SSH configuration file and add password authentication no and permit root login no. So if you need to edit anything in SSH, you can always just add it in your custom configuration file, at least in the recent Ubuntu and Debian. So there's something I want to confirm if it exists in DigitalOcean as well, and that is there's a default init configuration file for SSH that is created when the server is deployed. So let's just confirm if this exists in DigitalOcean as well, because on Vultr I found it. So let's see, Control-Shift-V ls to see if there's anything inside there. And yes, there is something inside there, so I was right. This is going to affect our configuration. Let me just rename it, and if I rename it, it will not be loaded along with our configuration files. Control-Shift-V, this is going to rename that file. user password. All right, so now we can disable password authentication root login. So I'm just going to copy that. Basically what this does is it just adds these 2 lines in this file. It's going to create that file and add those 2 lines, and then it's going to restart SSH. So I just put them together to save you time. Control Shift V, enter. All right, so if I was to look inside of that file ls, you'll see our custom file is there, and we can even view what's inside of the file. Tab, Control Delete, cut to view the content of this file, and inside of that file you're going to see we have permit root login no and password authentication no. By doing that, we have disabled password authentication and root login, but let us confirm. And let me just copy the login line. So this is the one that you use to log in, and you can just save it somewhere so that next time you need to log in, you can just copy it and paste it into your terminal. So I'll open a different terminal window. I need to confirm if I'm able to log in as the root user. So first, actually, I need to get this. So before I do anything here, let me open up Htop, because sometimes the server will log you out if it is dormant for a while, and I don't want that to happen. Control Shift V, enter. Permission denied. That's what we want to see. And at the same time, let's try to log in with this other user, with the new user we created without an SSH key, to see if we are able to log in. Control Shift V, enter. Okay, so that's what we want to see. The root user cannot log in, and you cannot log into the server without an SSH key. So to log in, you're going to have to copy this line and use that to log into your server. You must log in with an SSH key. All right, so that is done. The next step is firewall setup. So if you're going to install a control panel that comes with a firewall already set up, you don't need to do this. You can skip this. And HDRCP is one of the few that I know that will do this for you. I think even CyberPanel will enable the firewall for you, so you don't have to do this. But if you are using Docker or you're installing things that doesn't come with a firewall setup, you're going to need to set up a firewall. Here, what's happening is you install the firewall and then you enable the firewall. And in this case, we're using UFW. And UFW is an easy interface for setting up the firewall on Debian or Ubuntu. You can allow different things. If you want to allow SSH, that's how you allow it. If you want to allow HTTP, that's port 80, that's how you allow it. If you want to allow HTTPS, that's port 443, that's how you allow that. And if you want to allow other ports, maybe there's a specific port you want to allow. And this is something we're going to do in a moment as we change the SSH port. I'll just copy this. So remember, it's going to install, enable, and allow this. If you want to allow anything else, you can just add it as another command. So let's come back here. I'll do Control C to get out of that. Control L to clear the screen. Control Shift V to paste. Enter. It's just asking you to confirm, do you really want to enable the firewall? Because it might affect the network. It might lock you out if certain ports are not enabled. So just press Y, enter to confirm. And you're going to see that the rules have been added. And if you are to do sudo UFW status, it's going to show you the allowed ports. Control L. And after we set up the firewall, this is a nice way to go into the next step, which is to change the SSH port. I'm going to change the SSH port to that. If you want to, you can use a different port. Just make sure that the port that you're using is not being used by anything else. Copy. We are going to allow that port. Control Shift V. And if I was to do UFW status, you're going to see the new port has been added. Control L to clear the screen. Then I'll come back and we want to add this line to the custom SSH file that we created up there. I'm just going to copy that. Control Shift V. Enter. We can try to log in. And I'll just log in with this. I can exit to log out. Control L, Control Shift V to paste, enter, and you can see connection refused. Try again, connection refused. Now, if you need to log in, you're going to have to do -P with the new port. -P with the new port, enter. And just like that, now you're logged into your server with your new port. Let's see what is next. You can create a swap file, but before that, let's just confirm if DigitalOcean creates a swap for us. Okay, so you can see there is no swap file. So to create one, let's come back here, and a swap file, if you have like 2 GB of memory, a swap file is just a place that can temporarily be used to store certain files to prevent the system from crashing when you run out of memory. Sometimes it might crash, so just create a swap. Since you're on 2 GB, you should probably create one for 4 GB, and you're going to change that. You can also change the name that you give to the swap file. All the instances with Debian swap file, you can change those to whatever you prefer. I'm going to copy that, bring it to the terminal, Control Shift V, Control A to go to the beginning of the line. And I want to change the size of the file to 4 GB. So what's happening here is, first of all, we create that file and allocate it 4 GB. And then we're going to change the permissions of that file we've just created. And then that file, we're going to convert it to a swap file. And then we're going to turn on the swap. And then we're going to make the swap persist by adding a line to the etc fstub. So I'm just going to enter. And now if you were to do free-h, you'll see that we have a swap of 4 GB. Change the server host name. Now this is something you can do, but if you set up your host name, like I told you, you don't need to change this. Let's just confirm if the host name has been set up. Okay, the host name is there, -f, and our host name is correctly showing what we added when we were deploying our server. So if you didn't see that, let's go back to where I deployed my server and I said you can use a fully qualified domain name like that for your host name. And the next thing we want to confirm is if this has been added on our etc hosts. If it is not there, you're going to need to add it. etc hosts, enter. So you can see it's already added there. Escape, Shift ZQ to get out of that without saving. All right, so what is next? The last item is automatic updates. Set up automatic updates. So the unattended upgrades package is what is used for automating updates in Ubuntu and Debian. So that's what I'm going to install. So we are going to first of all install it and install it with that. And then we are going to enable automatic updates. And this, by running this, you're going to generate this file and you can edit this file to enable automatic updates. And these are just what is inside of the file that you'll be able to edit. So I'm going to copy everything there. Just click there to copy. And I'll do Control Shift V, enter. And then I'll accept yes. All right, so this is the last command, and the last command was to open that file. So I just ran them together instead of running one at a time. I put them together. If I scroll down in this section where there is unattended upgrades, I can delete these 2 lines, and that's because I want to update the apps as well. So any applications that are installed using sudo apt install for the default Debian repositories, I can update them with that. Even the proposed updates, I'm going to allow that as well. So I can just delete the comment, delete the comment. Right now, even if I do escape and then Shift ZZ to save, so I'm sure automatic updates have been set up. So just as simple as that, your automatic update for default Debian has been set up. Now, what if you have third-party repositories, right? Like right now, I don't have any third-party repositories. I've just installed the server. Let's say I add Kubernetes. The best example I can show with this is Kubernetes. So if I come here to my site as well, instead of going to the documentation, I can add the Kubernetes repository, install kubeadm, kubectl, and all those applications. These are just for demos. They're not important for you to know what they're for. So I'm going to install kubeadm, kubectl. So somewhere here, we add the repository for Kubernetes. So I'm going to copy this entire thing. It's going to add the repository for Kubernetes, and it's also going to install kubelet, kubeadm, and all those. And I'm going to use that to show you how to auto update third-party repositories. Control L, Control Shift V to paste, and I will run that. Even right now, if I was to, let's go back to Debian 12 initial setup. Right now, if I was to try and dry run the unattended upgrades, so I'm just going to copy that. We're going to see that no packages found can be upgraded, no pending auto removals. And that is not true because you saw that I installed Kubernetes. So next, let's see how we can set up third-party repositories. And in this case, the third-party repository that we have is Kubernetes. So the first thing, let me open up VS Code. There, auto update third-party repositories. So the default for Debian, if you look at this, let me copy this because I'm going to need it a bunch of times. Oh, and something else before I forget, this thing usually just logs me out if I don't do something for a while. So let me just leave htop running there for a moment. And this is just to make sure that the server doesn't auto log me out. So I'm just going to come here and Control V. I'm going to paste that in there. And Control C, Control Shift V. So you can see this is the default of how the distros are being labeled or being identified. Let's see how we can get our Kubernetes repository to look like that. Escape, Shift, ZZ, and I will leave htop running. I'm just running htop so it doesn't log me out. So we've established that this is how the others are being labeled in the unattended upgrades file. So let's come here and I'm going to paste that in there. That is a reference that we're going to use to edit and make sure our Kubernetes as well can also be added there so that it is updated. So the first thing we need to do, let's see all the repositories that are available on our Ubuntu, that are available on our Debian, I mean. So I will come here and I will list, Control C to get out of htop, and then Control Shift V to paste. And we want to see all the repositories that are available here. So you can see all this are Debian related. We don't care for the ones from debian.org. Those will be updated. The one we care about are the ones from Kubernetes. So we are going to copy this one, Kubernetes in release. So go for the in release, copy, come back. I will paste that in there. And let's come back here. And now we want to find out information about that repository. So I'm going to go up to here, copy. So this was an example I just added there with HTRCP, but of course we don't have HTRCP installed in this case. So I'm just going to use this. We want to see the file, the information for this repository. So that's why we are cutting to read the repository details. So let's come back, Control L to clear the screen, Control Shift V, enter. All right, so scroll all the way up because the only thing we are interested in here is from there to there. So I will copy that. I'm just going to paste the details there. We are going to make those details match this. All right, so origin, what are we told is the origin there? Copy the whole thing, origin, copy the whole origin from there, and then origin is equals to where Debian is, replace with the one for Kubernetes. And then after that, we need the code name. Code name, what are we told is the code name here? Code name, we're being told is deb. So let's come back here, and where code name is, remove everything before the comma and then replace with deb. And then label, what is a label? The label we're being told is ISV Kubernetes Stable version 130. So copy, and we're going to replace that with that. Control V. And now the moment of testing. So this is a part where this is why I chose to use Kubernetes, because you can see the repository is 130, but let me make the repository for this as 131. And we are going to change the repository for Kubernetes to 131, and you'll see that auto upgrades will help us upgrade it. Okay, so right now we've installed version 130, kubectl, kubeadm, and kubectl. It doesn't matter what those are. It's just that we're using those applications, we're using those packages as examples. So this is what you need to copy. So for every item that you want to auto update, make sure you find out its details and then you replace them. You replace them for that. Okay, just like I've done with this. So I'll come back here, and I want to first of all open this file, the unattended upgrades file, copy. Let's come back. I will do Control C to get out of htop, Control L, Control Shift V, and then enter. And then let's come to that point, and I'm just going to press tab. Before I press tab, let me go into insert mode. So to go into insert mode in Vim, I'm just pressing I, then I'll press tab so that we can get some indentation there. I'll go back here and I will copy that. Control Shift V to paste. So the one for Kubernetes has been added. So right now, if you have others to add, just paste them after that. And that's how you do it for this file. So for this file, we are done with it. I'm just going to press escape and then Shift ZZ to save and exit. After that, the next thing, of course, is the moment of testing. So if I was to do the unattended upgrades dry run, copy. So the dry run, just as the name suggests, it dry runs it. So Control Shift V and then enter. So take a note of this. Okay, look down there. You're going to see no packages found that can be upgraded, right? And that is true because our Kubernetes is still at version 130. So let's replace the Kubernetes version from 130 and let's make the new Kubernetes version. Let us say that we change the Kubernetes repository from version 130 to version 131. So if I change it to version 131, you'll see that now there is something to upgrade. So I've changed version 130 there and then enter. Kubernetes repository has been updated. So let's do apt update and check if, okay, so now that I can see 5 packages can be upgraded, this means that unattended upgrades can also identify those packages that need to be updated, but not that they can't be upgraded because Kubernetes usually hold these items, so they're not updated. If you want to update Kubernetes, you have to explicitly update it manually. So there we go, enter. And if I run that, you can see that it is telling me that the list of kept packages can't be calculated. So let me do this, okay? Let me, instead of dry run, let me just do debug without dry run. Enter. And now you'll see that, so I did debug without dry run because dry run is not going to show you packages that have been held back. So here you can see that kubeadm is marked as held back, but it has an update. So this means that unattended upgrades can actually update the third-party repositories. So right now, if I was to unhold these packages, and this is just a Kubernetes thing, but if this was another package, it would have automatically updated those items. So let's say, for example, that I come here and I unhold these packages. Okay, so you can see Kubernetes usually hold them back, so they're not updated automatically, or when you do apt update, apt upgrade, it doesn't update those items. Unhold, so you can just do sudo apt mark unhold, and this is going to unhold these packages. All right, so the hold on them has been cancelled. Right now, if I was to do sudo unattended upgrades debug, it's going to update those packages. So what can you see? All upgrades have been installed. Any repository that you add in that file will be updated, and you've seen how to get to that point. Everything you need is on this post on the Debian 12 initial server setup. At the end of the day, you have to do it for any repository that you add, but at least now you're sure that all your repositories will be updated automatically, not just the Debian repositories. If the video is too long, I hope it was worth it, and now you know how to automatically update all your Debian packages, all your Debian repositories. And that's it. That's how to do an initial server setup for Debian 12. If you have any questions, let me know. If you need help with this, you can find me on Fiverr. I'm just going to put the link in the description below. If you need help, you'll just let me know. That's it. Until next time. Hi there, and welcome to another video. In this video, you're going to see how to do a Debian 12 initial server setup, and I will do it on Vultr. So this is a Debian 12 initial server setup for Vultr. If you don't have a Vultr server, I'll provide a promo code link in the description, and this will give you $300 of free credit from Vultr. This is for new Vultr accounts only. Let's get started, and I'm going to start by deploying a server. To deploy a server on Vultr, just click there on go to deploy, then deploy new server. I want to use a shared CPU server, and I want a region in Europe. I can go with Stockholm in Sweden. Then the server type, so I'll go with high frequency or high performance. High frequency, I think these are Intel servers. So high performance, at least here you can choose whether you want to use Intel or AMD. I'm going to click on AMD to use AMD. And then I'm going to go with 2 virtual CPUs and 2 GB RAM. And then I will configure. So to configure, you just need to set up your operating system. So just a side note, I will do a tutorial for how to set up WordPress Open Lightspeed. If you're interested in that, follow me, and when that video comes up, you'll see it. So Debian 12, and then server settings, SSH key. I'm not going to use an SSH key for now. We're going to add our SSH key later, and therefore I'm just going to leave that blank, and this will allow me to log in with a password. Startup script, firewall group, I'm going to leave those as well. Server host name. Now the host name is an important one. Make sure you add a fully qualified domain name as a host name, because changing your host name on Vultr is a nightmare. So just make sure you add it here right now before deploying your server. I will enable IPv6, and our server is $18, but it comes to $21.60. That's because auto backups are enabled, and auto backups are charged at 20% of the server, which comes to $360. All right. That pretty much ends our server configuration. You can just check to confirm location Sweden, CPU, 2 CPU, 2 GB RAM. Most importantly, the images, Debian 12, and then deploy. So I'm going to give it a few minutes, like 3 minutes for it to deploy. Then we'll come back and you'll see how you can SSH into your new server. So while this is happening, if you're on Windows, make sure you download Git. Just search for Git and install it on Windows, then open up Git Bash. That's the terminal you should use to follow along with me if you're on Windows. On a Mac and Linux, just open any terminal. For me, I will be using Terminator. So if you're on Ubuntu, you can install Terminator, sudo apt install Terminator. Now, probably our server is ready. I'll click on it. Our server details are here. I will copy the IP SSH root shift at SSH root at Control Shift V to paste on Linux terminal, and you can do Shift Insert to paste in Git Bash. Enter. Yes. Copy the password. Control Shift V to enter. You won't see the password when you paste it in, so just press enter. There we go. Now we are logged in. The next step, let's come to our Debian 12 initial server setup, and I have added the link in the description, so following along will be easier. So let's get started. We've already logged into the server. Let's just update the server, and then we're going to install vim, curl, wget, sudo, and htop. This is just for all of us to be on the same level, because if maybe you're following along on a different cloud provider, you're going to find that some of these probably are not already installed. But on Vultr, I think all of these are already installed. Enter. Control L to clear the screen. Let's go to the next step. So the next step is to create an admin user, and you do this because the Linux root user is a common user. Everyone knows that on Linux root is there. So what most people do is you create an admin user that you can use to manage the server. You add them to the sudo group, you add them to the sudoers group, and then you disable the root user from logging into the server, so they can't SSH into the server. So in this case, we're going to add the user, and the username is that. You can give it whichever name you prefer. And once the user is added, you add a password for them. You're going to add this user to the sudo group, and that is going to give them permissions to administer the server as an administrator. So I'm going to copy all of that, and I'm just going to use that, but you can change the name to whatever you prefer. Control Shift V, enter. Give this user a strong password. Make sure it's a password that you can remember, because if you forget it, you may not be able to log in again. So for these others, I'm just going to press enter to skip them. Is this information correct? Press enter to confirm. Control L to clear the screen. So the next step is to test that user. The user is created and the user has been added to the sudoers group. So I can test this user, and I'm just going to copy this command. At the same time, I've just opened up VS Code, and I will be pasting things here that I will need to use and edit. In fact, let me just paste it here, and the new user we have said is your new user. And I will copy, Control Shift V to paste. Actually, I need to open this in my computer. This is not on the server. So let me open a new terminal window. And since I'm using Terminator, I can open a new window using Control Shift O. Down here, you see, we now have a new terminal. And I will paste, Control Shift V to paste, SSH with your new user. We want to test if we can do sudo commands. Enter. Control L to clear the screen. So you can do any sudo command you want, just to test if this user can use sudo. So if I do sudo apt update, you see it doesn't give me any warning. It just asks for the password, and that's a good sign. There you go. So now you can use this user to manage your server. So I'm going to come up here and I'll do Control Shift W to close that. Control L, clear the screen. So let's continue on with this new user. Let's go back and see what is the next step after creating the admin user. Let us set up SSH key authentication for the new user. So the first step is to generate the key, then you'll add the key to your server, and then after that you're going to log in. We're going to see how we can log in with the key. So this part is done on your local computer. You can see right here, I'm logged into my server, so I can open another terminal. So I can just open my normal terminal and use this on my local computer. So I'll just come back here to the Debian post, Debian 12 setup post. First, we need to generate a key. So to generate a key, we are going to generate a key and store the key inside of this directory. So first of all, we create the directory and then we generate the key. And you know what? I can put these commands together. So that's why I opened up VS Code. So I can put them together so I don't have to type too much. So there you go. First of all, we create it, then we generate a key. So to generate a key here, we're generating a key of type ED25519 key, and the key will be stored there. And this will be the name of the key. So the next time you create another key, maybe for a different server, you can just come in here and change the name maybe to my SSH key 2, or you can create a different directory and create another key in that directory. So this is why I do it this way, so that you can have multiple keys and all of them are stored in different directories. Public key to your server, copy the key to your server. So to copy the key, you're going to need SSH copy ID with the identity of the public key and your user and password there. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to do all this in one command, and it's just going to give me prompts to do various things here and there. But I can add that one here as well. I'll run them together. So SSH copy ID, I'll just remove that. SSH copy ID, our key will definitely be called that once we generate it. So SSH copy ID -I Control V. So that will be a public key. So we can add .pub here. When you're adding the key to the server, it is .pub. And then the host, I pasted the host here. So we are adding this key for this user, for the user we've just created. Control V. I'll run this together, and this is run on your local computer. Control Shift V, enter, enter. So the first step, the key is being generated, and that is why you're being asked for a passphrase. A passphrase is a password for your key. You can add it, you can leave it out. But if you want more security for your key, you add a passphrase so that if you're logging in with the key, first of all, you'll be asked for the passphrase. In this case, I'm just going to skip this by pressing enter. Press enter again, and the key is now generated. So it's saying something about error, too many arguments, SSH copy ID. Let's see. So at least the key is generated. If you see that the key is already generated, now the issue is coming up here under SSH copy ID -I. That is our key. Oh yeah. So I copied SSH here. We didn't need this. That's the only error there. Okay. You probably saw that. That's the only error there that's giving us this problem. So the key has been generated. These steps, only this one has the problem. So we're going to come back. I'm going to do Control L and then Control Shift V, enter, enter. So it's going to try and add the key and then ask you for the password for your key, for your user. So enter the password for the user that you're adding the key for. There we go. Now the SSH key for our user has been added. So the next step, let's try to log in with the user. So to log in with your SSH key, you are just going to, let's just copy that. So we added the key for this user. Copy, Control Shift V, the identity of the key. This is the identity of the key. The one without .pub. That's the identity of our key for logging in. I will copy this, bring it to my terminal, Control L to clear the screen. Let's log in with our new key. There we go. We can now log into our server. So I'm just going to close that. I don't need to use this window. I prefer to use Terminator. So this server has already logged me out here because it was dormant for some time. So I'm just going to open up a new window and I will log in with my key here, Control Shift V, enter. So you see now you don't need to log in with your password, you just log in with the private key. So I'll close the upper window, Control Shift W to close the window in Terminator, Control L to clear the screen, and let's continue and see what is next. Now the next step is to disable. We've already logged in, is to disable the root user from logging in. And usually other tutorials, you'll find that the SSH configuration file is edited directly. But in this case, I'm going to create a custom file here. And in this file, I'm going to add my SSH configuration that I need. In this case, it will be password authentication, no, and permit root login, no. And then after that, we'll expect to restart SSH. Even before I do that, there's something down here. Inside of this directory, there's another file that comes by default. It is created by Cloud Init on Vultr. So I'm sure Vultr has it. I think I saw one on Hetzner and DigitalOcean as well. I would have to confirm. But what I'm going to do so that this does not affect my configuration is I'm just going to rename it from cloudinit.conf, and I'm going to remove the .conf. And just by removing the .conf, it will make sure that these settings are not loaded with SSH configuration. So I'm just going to Control-Shift-V, enter. All right, so now that that is renamed, we can create our own configuration file. So even before I do it, we can actually see what we're doing there. I'm just going to clean all of this. We check inside there. If I do an ls inside of this directory, you'll see now we have that, but we want to create our configuration file, enter. Once we create it, if you do an ls in that directory, you'll see now we have our mycustom.conf. You can call it whatever you want. That's just an SSH configuration file that will be loaded along with the default configurations for SSH. So after doing this, we can try to log in. We can try to log in and see if we can log in without a password, and if the root user can also log in. So copy that. Terminal. I'll open a new terminal window here. Let's see if this is going to allow us to log in. Enter. Public key permission denied. You can see that. And the root user also trying to log in. Root, enter. All right, so now the only way to log into the server is via SSH key. And if you want to log in, you'd have to enter -I, the identity of your key right there. So if you don't know how to find this, you can just copy the entire line, paste it somewhere and keep it there. If you need to log in, you copy and paste. And that will make it easier for you to log in if you don't know how to get these details just by typing them. Control-L. Close the window, we don't need it. What is next on our Debian setup? The next step is to enable firewall. So if you're going to install a control panel like strcp, you don't really need to set up the firewall. You can skip this step. If you're installing something else that doesn't set up the firewall for you, then you have to set up the firewall yourself. And the easiest way to set up the firewall on Debian or even Ubuntu is to use UFW. So you'll just install it. If it is not already installed, you'll install it and then you enable it. And then you can allow whatever you want to allow. For example, in this case, I've allowed SSH, I've allowed HTTP, and I've allowed HTTPS. If you need to allow a specific port, and we're going to do this within the next 2 minutes probably, you can allow a port like that. So when you change the SSH port, we're going to allow a specific port. So I'll just copy this as an example. Install UFW, enable UFW, allow specific ports. Control-Shift-V, enter. Confirm that you want to disrupt your network, and this may log you out if you disable specific ports that you need to use. So enter Y and then enter. Control-L. And if I was to do sudo UFW status, so you can check which ports have been allowed using this command UFW status, sudo UFW status. So you can see port 80, port 443, port 22 have been allowed. So Control-L to clear the screen. And this is going to give us a nice segue into the next part. And the next part is changing the SSH port. While we're still on the issue of UFW, we can allow our SSH port, and I'm going to use this port. You can use any port that you prefer. Just make sure the port is not being used by any other service. Ctrl+Shift+V to enter to allow this port. And if I was to do UFW status, you're going to see now port 7020 has been allowed. Let's continue on into allowing the SSH port. So up there we created our custom SSH configuration file. So we don't need to create it again. We're just going to add this port 7020. So -A simply appends it to that, appends this line to our file, and then it's going to restart SSH, and that is going to enable our SSH port. So if you changed the port up there, make sure you change it down here as well. Ctrl+Shift+V, enter. So if I was to cut this file, cut, to view the content, Ctrl+Shift+C, Ctrl+Shift+V, enter, you can see that the port has been added there. Let's try again to log in using the default ports. So if I try to log in, you can see connection refused. Try again, connection refused. So to log in, you have to enter the port -P, and our port is 7020. Enter. There you go. So these are very important security things, and you can see why they're important. If your server is being attacked and someone is trying to gain access, they'll probably be using a bot. So if their bot is only using port 22, then you're already saved from that. Let's see what's remaining. And this is just showing you how to log in, SSH username, the IP, and the identity of your file, and the -P at the end. Now create a swap file. I put everything in just one line to make it easy for you. You don't have to run one command after the other, right? But just to explain it, you're going to enable that to G, so you can change the size of your swap file. And maybe you want to use for G instead of 1 GB, I mean. You can change that. I'm going to copy this and then Ctrl+Shift+V, and you can also change the instances where the file is called Debian swap file. If you want to change that, you can change that as well, this one. And you just change all the instances where the Debian swap file is. You can change the name, it doesn't really matter, but if you want to change it, you can change it. So first of all, we allocate 2 GB to that file, then we change the permission of that file, and then we make this file into a swap file, and then you turn on the swap, and then we add it so that it can persist. So this will just add it in our etc fstub. So when it is added in etc fstub, when you reboot, the swap will still be recognized. So that's why you add it in the etc fstub. And then I'm just going to enter to create the 2 GB of swap file. So now if I was to do free -h, you'll see that. So, okay, it's like there was already some swap before I created mine, and you can see it's just been added to that. So the total swap file. So actually this is a good thing. If Vultr automatically creates the swap for you, you don't need to create it. I wasn't aware of this. Seems like they automatically created it. Right, changing the host name. We don't need to do this because if you followed my guidance on adding your host name, you don't need to add it again. The host name is that. So most importantly, you just need to check if vi etc hosts has that. So as long as the loopback IP has it, then that's not a problem. We can leave it at that. Most importantly, make sure you change that setting in Vultr when deploying your server. Add your host name, then Shift+ZQ to close out of that. Let's come back and see what is next. Now, the next part is setting up automatic updates. Now, I'm not going to do this because I have a really nice video but it's going to show you how to set this up and even set up for third-party repositories. So I'm just going to edit that and attach it to this. Of course, you'll find it in this video. I will attach it to this. I'll just add it to the end of this video. Set up automatic updates. So the unattended upgrades package is what is used for automating updates in Ubuntu and Debian. So that's what I'm going to install. So we are going to first of all install it and install it with that. and then we are going to enable automatic updates. And this, by running this, you're going to generate this file, and you can edit this file to enable automatic updates. And these are just what is inside of the file that you'll be able to edit. I'm going to copy everything there. Just click there to copy, and I'll do Ctrl+Shift+V, enter, and then I'll accept, yes. All right, so this is the last command, and the last command was to open that file. So I just ran them together instead of running one at a time. I put them together. If I scroll down in this section where there is unattended upgrades, I can delete these 2 lines, and that's because I want to update the apps as well. So any applications that are installed using sudo apt install for the default Debian repositories, I can update them with that. Even the proposed updates, I'm going to allow that as well. So I can just delete the comment, right now. Even if I do escape and then Shift ZZ to save, so I'm sure automatic updates have been set up. So just as simple as that, your automatic update for default Debian has been set up. Now, what if you have third-party repositories, right? Like right now, I don't have any third-party repositories. I've just installed the server. Let's say I add Kubernetes. The best example I can show with this is Kubernetes. So if I come here to my site as well, instead of going to the documentation, I can add the Kubernetes repository, install kubeadm, kubectl, and all those applications. These are just for demos. They're not important for you to know what they're for. So I'm going to install kubeadm, kubectl. So somewhere here, we add the repository for Kubernetes. So I'm going to copy this entire thing. It's going to add the repository for Kubernetes, and it's also going to install kubelet, kubeadm, and all those. And I'm going to use that to show you how to auto update third-party repositories. Ctrl+L, Ctrl+Shift+V to paste, and I will run that. Even right now, if I was to, let's go back to Debian 12 initial setup. Right now, if I was to try and dry run the unattended upgrades. So I'm just going to copy that. We're going to see that no packages found can be upgraded, no pending auto removals. And that is not true because you saw that I installed Kubernetes. So next, let's see how we can set up third-party repositories. And in this case, the third-party repository that we have is Kubernetes. So the first thing, let me open up VS Code. There, auto update third-party repositories. So the default for Debian, if you look at this, let me copy this because I'm going to need it a bunch of times. Oh, and something else before I forget, this thing usually just logs me out if I don't do something for a while. So let me just leave htop running there for a moment. And this is just to make sure that the server doesn't auto log me out. So I'm just going to come here and Ctrl+V, I'm going to paste that in there, and Ctrl+C, Ctrl+Shift+V. So you can see this is the default of how the distros are being labeled or being identified. Let's see how we can get our Kubernetes repository to look like that. Escape, Shift, ZZ, and I will leave htop running. I'm just running htop so it doesn't log me out. So we've established that this is how the others are being labeled in the unattended upgrades file. So let's come here and I'm going to paste that in there. That is a reference that we're going to use to edit and make sure our Kubernetes as well can also be added there so that it is updated. So the first thing we need to do, let's see all the repositories that are available on our Ubuntu, that are available on our Debian, I mean. So I will come here and I will list, Ctrl+C to get out of htop, and then Ctrl+Shift+V to paste. And we want to see all the repositories that are available here.
So you can see all this Debian related. We don't care for the ones from debian.org. Those will be updated. The one we care about are the ones from Kubernetes. So we are going to copy this one, Kubernetes in release. So go for the in release, copy, come back. I will paste that in there. And let's come back here. And now we want to find out information about that repository. So I'm going to go up to here, copy. So this was an example I just added there with HTTP, but of course we don't have HTTP installed in this case. So I'm just going to use this. We want to see the file, the information for this repository. So that's where we are cutting to read the repository details. So let's come back, Control L to clear the screen, Control Shift V, enter. All right, so scroll all the way up because the only thing we are interested in here is from there to there. So I will copy that. I'm just going to paste the details there. We are going to make those details match this. All right, so origin, what are we told is the origin there? Copy the whole thing, origin, copy the whole origin from there, and then origin is equals to where Debian is, replace with the one for Kubernetes. And then after that, we need the code name. Code name, what are we told is the code name here? Code name we're being told is Deb. So let's come back here, and where code name is, remove everything before the comma and then replace with Deb. And then label, what is a label? The label we're being told is ISV, Kubernetes stable version 130. So copy, and we're going to replace that with that. Control V. And now the moment of testing. So this is a part where this is why I chose to use Kubernetes, because you can see the repository is 130, but let me make the repository for this as 131. And we are going to change the repository for Kubernetes to 131. And you'll see that auto upgrades will help us upgrade it. Okay, so right now we've installed version 130, kubectl, kubeadm, and kubectl. It doesn't matter what those are. It's just that we're using those applications, we're using those packages as examples. So this is what you need to copy. So for every item that you want to auto update, make sure you find out its details and then you replace them. You replace them for that. Okay, just like I've done with this. So I'll come back here and I want to first of all open this file, the unattended upgrades file, copy. Let's come back. I will do Control C to get out of htop, Control L, Control Shift V, and then enter. And then let's come to that point, and I'm just going to press tab. Before I press tab, let me go into insert mode. So to go into insert mode in Vim, I'm just pressing I, then I'll press tab so that we can get some indentation there. I'll go back here and I will copy that. Control Shift V to paste. So the one for Kubernetes has been added. So right now, if you have others to add, just paste them after that. And that's how you do it for this file. So for this file, we are done with it. I'm just going to press escape and then Shift ZZ to save and exit. After that, the next thing, of course, is the moment of testing. So if I was to do the unattended upgrades dry run, copy. So the dry run, just as the name suggests, it dry runs it. So Control Shift V and then enter. So take a note of this. Okay, look down there. You're going to see no packages found that can be upgraded, right? And that is true because our Kubernetes is still at version 130. So let's replace the Kubernetes version from 130 and let's make the new Kubernetes version. Let us say that we change the Kubernetes repository from version 130 to version 131. So if I change it to version 131, you'll see that now there is something to upgrade. So I've changed version 130 there and then enter. Kubernetes repository has been updated. So let's do apt update and check if, okay, so now that I can see 5 packages can be upgraded, this means that unattended upgrades can also identify those packages that need to be updated, but not that they can't be upgraded, because Kubernetes usually hold these items so they're not updated. If you want to update Kubernetes, you have to explicitly update it manually. So there we go, enter. And if I run that, you can see that it is telling me that the list of kept packages can't be calculated. So let me do this, okay? Let me, instead of dry run, let me just do debug without dry run. Enter. And now you'll see that, so I did debug without dry run because dry run is not going to show you packages that have been held back. So here you can see that kubedm is marked as held back, but it has an update. So this means that unattended upgrades can actually update the third-party repositories. So right now, if I was to unhold these packages, and this is just a Kubernetes thing, but if this was another package, it would have automatically updated those items. So let's say, for example, that I come here and I unhold these packages. Okay, so you can see Kubernetes usually hold them back, so they're not updated automatically, or when you do apt update, apt upgrade, it doesn't update those items. Unhold, so you can just do sudo apt mark unhold, and this is going to unhold these packages. All right, so the hold on them has been cancelled. Right now, if I was to do sudo unattended upgrades debug, it's going to update those packages. So what can you see? All upgrades have been installed. Any repository that you add in that file will be updated, and you've seen how to get to that point. Everything you need is on this post. On the Debian 12 initial server setup, at the end of the day, you have to do it for any repository that you add, but at least now you're sure that all your repositories will be updated automatically, not just the Debian repositories. Now you know how to automatically update all your Debian packages, all your Debian repositories. All right, that should cover how to set up Debian 12 on Vultr. You can follow along with any cloud provider, but I chose to use Vultr for this because I want to actually create another video for DigitalOcean doing the same thing, and another one for Contabo, Hetzner, like that. Okay, so that's it. If you don't have a server with Vultr and you want to try them, my link is in the description. If you do and you end up using and you set up, and eventually I might get something from that, that really helps me a lot, because this is all I do. I don't have any other job. This is all I do. So if I'm able to get something from this, I'm grateful. If you have any question, you're stuck anywhere, just let me know. I will see how to assist you. And that's it for this one. If you have any questions, let me know.